This is an 1,100-pound crash bar.
If you follow politicians, you will never come at all. Never come at all. You will never come at all. And if you follow his religions, you will never come at all. We are going to Zion.
I'm tired of running. I've gone from being frightened to mostly angry. I'm fully prepared for the eventuality that there will be an attempted raid on my residence or my car or my person at some place or some time.
When we remember Zion, all the wicked carry us away. Shout it out, brothers and sisters. Shout it, freedom. Shout it out loud and clear. So let the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in thy sight, oh shout it out, brothers and sisters. Shout it, freedom. Shout it out, brothers. Say the rivers are Babylon, hey, where peace are down, and
I've dreamed of retiring since I was 16. But retiring is nearly impossible for me. I enjoy fishing and snorkeling. That's what I want to do with my life. But I moved to Belize, and the first day I'm snorkeling out by the reef, I'm thinking about, we need a boat system up here. There's this group, and many of you here may even be on it, called Blue Light. If there are some drug aficionados in the room, raise your hands if you know Blue Light. One. Good man. And a lady at that. All right, marvelous. So, well, Blue Light is the #1 drug form on the planet, and it's composed of very intelligent, well-educated people, many of them chemists, others are doctors and psychiatrists, and they have this incredible attitude that we should all be taking drugs. Well, I don't particularly want to take drugs, and I had a bet with a friend. What I did is I created, okay, there was this drug, on Blue Light, you remember MDPV-10, yes? Sure, the mythical drug that did everything. It made you a sexual god. It made you live forever. It gave you energy that you could go for 50 weeks without sleeping, and you gained weight. And it was just marvelous stuff. But it was fake. It was just a ruse created by a couple of British gentlemen. But no one really believed that it was a ruse. And for years, and this is about 12 years ago, that this mythical drug rose up. So I went online, and as a member called Stuffmonger, I didn't give my name, I gave the formula for recreating MDPV-10 and invited everybody to recreate it themselves. And for 3 months, these highly intelligent people were dicking around with stove ovens and baking soda and kitchen utensils, doing absolutely nothing. And I just had the laugh of my life. I was naked, carrying a gun. I saw what was happening. I put my gun down, was thrown up against the wall. handcuffed, made to sit. They let me put some pants on, by the way, out of politeness to the women in the crowd. It's no fun to look at a naked 68-year-old man, I can promise you. So, get me handcuffed in the sun for 14 hours, kneeling with my hands behind my back. A very painful thing. I do not recommend it for anyone, even those who are heavy S&M amongst you. It's not fun. So, and then left without any charges. Why? 2 weeks earlier, the local politician, by the way, I lived on the island of San Pedro, which is a marvelous place. All the tourists go there. It's just like America. Speak English. Everybody's white. I moved to the interior, the only white man in a town of 10,000 people. And I moved into the backyard of the most powerful man in Belize. After I'd been there for a year, a representative came and said, why don't you donate $2 million to my patron's campaign, and in return we'll give you all this land and benefits and so on. And I said, no. They raided my property 2 weeks later, came back 2 weeks after that and said, have you changed your mind? And I said, yes, I'm pissed off now. And so I went to the international press, and that was in May of 2012. And for 8 months, I ran an ongoing war with the Belizean government, demanding an apology at the very least, and getting the attention of the world government on the corruption and all the nightmares that were happening. I should have listened to my compatriot Americans and say, stay in San Pedro, fish, surf, and snorkel. I did not.
And then there was the neighbor.
The death of my neighbor, Mr. Fall, who I barely knew. That was a convenient thing for the, by the way, not to make light of Mr. Fall's death, Belize is one of the most dangerous countries in the world and is called the murder capital of the world by many organizations because the per capita death rate is the highest of any country in the world. I barely knew Mr. Fall. It was a convenient thing for the Belizean government to try to pick me up for questioning because in Belize, you may hold someone for questioning for 60 days with no charges, and you may renew that indefinitely. So I could have been 60 years waiting to be questioned. I chose not to go that route, and I went underground.
Why didn't you try to get a U.S. attorney or someone to help you out?
Well, you're assuming that the legal system in the rest of the world is much like here in the States, where a court order has bite. Let me give you an example. The telephone company in Belize was nationalized 3 years ago by the Belizean government. It was the company had been owned by a gentleman named Lord Ashcroft. Lord Ashcroft went to court. The appeals court said, hey, give it back. The prime minister, instead of giving it back, sent the army into the telephone headquarters and prevented the employees from coming back. There's no law there. I mean, why hire a lawyer? Why pay the lawyer to end up saying, gee, I can't do anything for you? You know, you suffer your losses in life. You know, you take what comes and move on. That's what I did.
So you already had the attention of the international press. You decided to run. Tell me about that. What was did you have an idea of what you were going to do? Did you have a plan, or did you just kind of move out?
Well, I just moved out. I mean, I left. I was planning to leave alone, and one of the women I was living with said, "You're not going without me."
That was Sam.
That was Samantha, a vicious little girl. And so, you know, rather than have Sam and the army after me, I took her with me. It was a wise choice. I felt my life was in danger, and I'm convinced it was. I had every single day written notices to some press somewhere. I had started a blog, and it had devastated the tourist industry in Belize. Tourism accounted for 70% of the Belizean gross national product. It dropped by 50% after I started my blog. They just wanted me out of the way. So, call that paranoid, call it not, I don't care. It's what was actually happening. The diversion tactic. All of the borders had, I was the number one, every single army officer and soldier and every policeman in the country had my photograph. And there was a bounty. And they had blocked all of the borders. However, the Belizeans, you know, are just very strange people. They tend to hire, for example, a policeman gets $42 a month, US. Now from that, he's got to feed his family, send his children to school, pay his rent, and so on. It is not much money. So not the smartest people take those jobs.
The net result of all of that, from a U.S. point of view, from a press point of view, from what people were reading in the newspapers and seeing on TV, was John has gone off the deep end. John is doing all these deceptive things. John has all these girlfriends. John's been dabbling in drugs. We don't know who this guy is anymore. Do you sort of feel bad about how much your persona changed through that experience?
Well, that was my persona as viewed through the press and as those who read the press and believe it. The press is notoriously inaccurate. Now, may I do a demonstration for you? May I ask for honesty from you folks for just 2 minutes? I'd like to see a raising of hands for those of you who have at any time in your life been divorced. Now, leave your hands up for just a moment. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, of those of you who have been divorced, at any time were you unfaithful to your ex-wife or husband? Leave your hand up if it was. 5, 6, 7, 8. Anybody else? Some of you put your hands down after you kept them up. Okay, well, at least 8 people. Well, that's a pretty fair thing. Let me ask you another question. How many of you people are currently married? Raise your hands. How many of you have actually been unfaithful to your current husband or wife? Nobody. Nobody. Do you see the statistical impossibility of these 2 samples? Now, okay, what is the difference? One is, I'm asking you about something that's current, something happening today. Now, what happened 5 years ago? You got your hand up, you're hoping the camera will go on, you go, yeah, bitch, see? But now, no, I'm currently married wife, please do not put the camera on me, and my hand never went up. Here's the point I'm trying to make. The press is consistently concerned with what's happening now. It is human nature. If you work downtown and there was a robbery next door to your work, and a policeman happens by and says, where were you today? You're going to try to find some reason to explain why you could not have done this. This is just human nature. And so the press is now saying, what about now and here? And trying to find truth. Well, good luck. So what it says is of no interest in it. I'd never heard of a computer virus, and up to that point, I think neither had anyone else, not even conceived of one. I was reading it thinking, what the heck is this? And then it came to me, oh, I know what they did. I got some code that really replicates itself. Cool. And as soon as I got that, I got, you know what, that's easy to fix. Cool. And I wrote a little program, and that was the beginning of McAfee.
At some point, all of that money sort of dwindled by press reports. There's one estimate that said that at your lowest point, your net worth was down to about $4 million. That may have been due to the recession and so forth. Is that accurate?
Again, I really have no clue. People ask me how much money. If someone wandered up to you in the street and said, how much money do you have, or what are you worth? Would you be thrilled or offended, or what would you feel? You know, most people would be offended, and I'm like most people. Excuse me, I'm looking at what I'm looking for. I'm very much like most people, and really, it's nobody's business. So the numbers that I throw out are numbers that I just randomly feel like throwing out. If the number 4 looks good today, I'll say I'm worth $4 million. You know? If the number 44 was the first 2 numbers of the lottery winner yesterday, I'll say, well, 44 million. You know, it's meaningless. Believe nothing I say when it comes to my work. You know, it is no one's business but mine. Believe nothing I say when it comes to my work. You know, it is no one's business but mine.
Here at Shea McAfee, the scotch is brought in by the case.
And champagne is waiting as usual.
Champagne is on ice.
And excuse me for smoking, people, but it's one of my vices.
Cigarettes are always ablaze, and the guns are always loaded.
At 1,300 feet per second, this is at 800 feet per second.
So which one would hurt more?
Oh, this? Absolutely.
But I'm not here for a party or target practice. I'm here to talk to him about how his life took a very dark turn during his Central American interlude.
Why did you go to Belize in the first place?
Well, because I'm a stupid man.
Easy to joke now in his pleasant suburban kitchen, but back in 2009, before everything went so horribly wrong, Belize seemed a brilliant idea for John McAfee, who was eager to escape the cascade of lawsuits back in the U.S.
Most beautiful beach in the world, a reef, a quarter of a mile offshore. I snorkel, I fish, I swim, I love the water. It was beautiful.
The quintessential millionaire's dream. He purchased a spread on an island called Ambergris Key, surrounded by American expats. But McAfee's most intriguing fantasy wasn't on the beach at all.
All right, get ready for some serious Heart of Darkness here.
As seen on this CNBC report, he purchased a second property in the interior of the country and moved deep in the jungle to a place called Orange Walk, where he had set up a lab.
I thought, wow, this is a dream come true.
Allison Adonisio was a Harvard-trained microbiologist he brought into the jungle. The famed entrepreneur was at it again with his latest startup venture, creating plant-based antibiotics. But she says the enterprise fell apart when her benefactor started to become unhinged.
He became very paranoid. He was talking about taking over the country. I started to think, this guy is a madman.
McAfee says he was helping the locals, feeding poor families and providing many with jobs.
I employed half of the town. I can show you a letter from the mayor saying that Mr. McAfee's done more for Orange Walk than any of our citizens have.
But exactly what was he doing for those citizens? McAfee admits he brought in young women to be in his harem. Then there was the gang of convicted criminals McAfee proudly says he hired as his armed bodyguards, his own private militia.
Everybody I hired was an ex-felon and had spent half of their life in prison.
It sounds like that's a recipe for disaster.
They never shot anybody, they never even shot at anybody, never even pointed a gun at anybody because they were dangerous people.
He called them hitmen. He told me repeatedly that he could have people hurt, taken out if he wanted to.
Adonisio says it all became too much for her. But listen to her traumatic account of what she says happened when she told McAfee she wanted out.
When I did go over there, the conversation did not go as I expected. And God, I feel so stupid.
She wasn't able to go on.
I'm sorry,
The one time she was able to describe publicly what she says happened was in a documentary film about McAfee called Gringo.
I told him I had a headache, and he brought me, he went into the other room and he brought me 2 pills and a glass of orange juice. It tasted foul.
She says he drugged her with that juice and then raped her.
I only have sort of flashes of recollection. He was standing over me, naked. I grabbed my clothes. I don't even remember taking them off.
Adonisio says she quickly fled Belize without telling the local police. She says U.S. authorities told her they had no jurisdiction, so no charges were pursued.
I don't know what to tell you except that I have emotional and physical scars from that experience.
Allison Adonisio, a madwoman.
A madwoman.
A madwoman.
Well, she claims that you raped her. You
Right.
drugged her and raped her.
Well, she can claim whatever she likes. Never had sex with her, certainly never raped her. She seemed rational. She was not.
I find it rather ironic that somebody as unhinged as McAfee would say that I'm unstable. I think that I'm pretty strong considering everything that I've had to go through.
Then, in April of 2012, McAfee was about to have trouble with the law for an entirely different reason.
There was a belief that he was manufacturing illicit drugs on the compound, like as I said, because of all the different criminal elements that were there. It's very unusual that you'd be doing research into plants and you need so many people to protect you.
Microphone ready.
Belize's gang suppression unit raided his lab. They say on suspicion he was making meth. No drugs were found. McAfee claims the government was harassing him because he wouldn't pay bribes.
I was on the verge of something when I refused to pay an extortion for $2 million, and a week later, the gang suppression unit destroyed my lab.
McAfee abandoned the jungle and moved back to Ambergris Key, but trouble followed. Among his neighbors was this man, Greg Fall, a builder who came from Central Florida to Central America.
This is the house in Belize. Took him about 7 years to build it.
Greg's mother, Eileen Keeney, says her son wanted a peaceful retirement in the Caribbean, but when she came to visit him a few months later, she says it was anything but peaceful.
Greg was not happy with him, and he had had some issues with McAfee.
Keeney says her son Greg was disgusted by what McAfee had brought back from the jungle, that harem of women, the armed guards, and especially the swarm of dogs that constantly menaced passersby.
He said, now, we're going to be walking past McAfee's house, and there's going to be dogs there. Now, they're usually fenced up, but he says, I just want to warn you.
As Keeney headed home to Florida, she had no clue what was ahead. 2 days later, she received an unfathomable phone call from her daughter.
And then she told me, Greg's been murdered. And I left out this blood-curdling scream.
A brutal beachside murder. Was the eccentric millionaire involved?
He's the elusive and eccentric millionaire behind the household name that's protected millions of computers for decades. But after John McAfee cashed in on his pioneering antivirus software, he dropped off the radar. It became an international fugitive, running from police who wanted to question him about a murder in Belize. And now he's finally ready to tell his story, but only and exclusively to ABC's Matt Gutman.
He is a party animal.
John? Huh?
A one-time tech multimillionaire.
It is the #1 computer threat.
Presidential candidate.
Stand with me to protect our freedom.
And international fugitive.
John. We begin with that software millionaire on the run, suspected of murder.
John McAfee became rich and famous for creating and selling his self-named antivirus software.
You made $100 million, let's say, from selling McAfee, right?
That's what they say.
How much did you make?
Well, much more.
What did you do with the money?
I wasted it like everybody does money.
He built 9 homes, filled them with expensive art and furniture, bought a fleet of antique cars.
Is that love? Isn't it selfishness?
Even creating a Zen yoga retreat. But McAfee says his Zen was disturbed by a constant wave of what he calls frivolous lawsuits. So he decamped to this idyllic-looking compound in Belize.
John McAfee
has been eluding police.
But trouble still followed him. In 2012, authorities in Belize named him as the sole person of interest in the murder of Greg Fall, his American neighbor, who was shot in the head inside his home. They sought McAfee for questioning. McAfee refused, instead going on the run.
Of course he's the main suspect here. You've got the motive, you've got this incident with the dog.
McAfee dodged authorities all the way back to the U.S., where he has been ever since, never charged with a crime. Now, for the first time, he is sitting down to answer questions in a no-holds-barred interview.
Why did you go on the run?
Because if I didn't go on the run, I'd be a dead man now.
I first crossed paths with McAfee in 2012.
From just outside John McAfee's compound, its owner this morning is on the run.
That was when he was hiding out from authorities and would only talk to me by phone.
When we say we're going to talk tomorrow, does that mean face-to-face?
After 3 weeks in the jungle in Belize, he fled for Guatemala, where he was arrested. It was all caught on camera by Vice TV. Once in jail, he faked a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital, followed by the press. Miraculously, McAfee opened his eyes and asked the nurses not to undress him in front of the media.
You faked the heart attack.
Sure, I faked it. What would you have done?
He was deported back to America, landing in Miami, where he met his future wife, Janice. She was a prostitute at the time.
He saw the human in me. He thought I was worthy enough of a second chance.
Is it strange for you to have found love in your late 60s, early 70s?
I instantly saw in Janice what I had been looking for my entire life.
The two of them now live in this upscale but hardly lavish spread. They share their home with their ever-present bodyguard and an arsenal of guns.
Is it a real gun, though, or is it like an air rifle?
Believe me, it's a real gun.
Do you have a fascination with guns?
I have a fascination with survival.
And then there is this pack of dogs. Back in his Belize compound, McAfee had a swarm of dogs there as well, which was a bone of contention for his neighbor, Greg Fall. Greg's mother, Eileen Keeney, says her son wanted a peaceful retirement in the Caribbean, but she says it was anything but peaceful.
Now, we're going to be walking past McAfee's house, and there's going to be dogs there. Now, they're usually fenced up, but he says, I just want to warn you.
She says those dogs were aggressive. Fall allegedly told friends that he was going to take care of the problem himself.
Greg had told them that he was going to poison the dogs.
Then one evening, some poisoned meat was thrown over McAfee's fence. All 9 of his dogs were poisoned. The very next night, an intruder snuck into Fall's home, tased him several times, and then shot him in the head. The house showed no sign of forced entry. Nothing was taken from inside.
He was brutally murdered, and he had no enemies.
The case is still open, and Nanette Burstein's recent documentary, Gringo, alleges that McAfee was the mastermind behind Fall's murder.
You think you found the smoke to the fire of the Greg Fall murder?
Yes, I did.
In Gringo, this man, McAfee's beachfront caretaker named Cashin, alleges his boss paid to have it done.
This Thursday night, the dogs were poisoned. The following morning, sometime around 9 o'clock, John called me. He said, take this money, $5,000, and go put it in this guy's account.
Cashin says the man who got that money called him late the night of the murder to come pick him up.
Then I realized that this $5,000 was for him to do that.
To do what?
To kill the guy. Nanette has been after me since...
In a video McAfee posted online, Cashin would later recant his story.
John had nothing to do with that murder.
Let me make this perfectly clear. I had nothing to do with the murder of Gregory Fall. You're asking the most ridiculous thing.
This is not, you have to admit that it's not ridiculous.
It is.
That your dogs, 9 of your dogs, your beloved dogs, were poisoned. And
Were
the next
killed by
day,
the government?
that would make a man who loves animals absolutely irate.
Right.
It would be enough to make a man who loves his dogs willing to kill, some would say.
Does this man look to you like he would be stupid enough to kill whoever was responsible?
I don't think he would be stupid enough.
The night after? Let me
Did
tell
you order a hit on him?
Of course not, please. I am sick of police. We're finished with
That is
police.
your choice. But we're not, I'm not, I have a couple more questions about Belize.
As we ratcheted up the pressure on McAfee about Belize, he started to walk out on our main interview.
You're walking out on this.
Yes, because you have not kept your word.
I have kept my word.
There had been no preconditions to the interview, and McAfee quickly calmed down and sat down.
Our computers are no longer back home in the office, they are in our hands.
These days, McAfee could be called a prophet of digital doom, and his apocalyptic warnings about today's cyber threats attract plenty of eyeballs, both in person and on TV.
We're being spied on by our government. John McAfee.
He's now the CEO of MGT Capital, a company that invests in cybersecurity companies like the one that developed this cell phone, which McAfee claims is the first ever that can't be hacked.
Given the obsession with hacking, it seems like the perfect time for John McAfee.
Well, it's an opportunity for me to speak again. People are listening.
And truth is, it's one of the reasons he said he agreed to spend time with me.
What do you hope to get out of this interview?
I hope to get at least 10 minutes that I can talk about the serious problem in the world, which is cybersecurity. We're living in 1984. Our freedoms are being restricted, our security is being eroded, and we have no more privacy. If we lose privacy, we will lose civilization, and we will certainly lose our humanity.
With McAfee, the truth is always slippery. He could say there's only one constant in his life.
How would you define yourself? Are you a madman? Are you paranoid? Are you an entrepreneur? Who are you?
All of the above. I've always followed my own path. I mean, you know, the drummer that leads me is an odd drummer.
Barely a day after John McAfee surfaced in Guatemala, the software pioneer is under arrest in the Central American country. McAfee went to Guatemala from Belize, where he's wanted for questioning in connection with the shooting death of another American.
They're trying to arrest me for coming into the country illegally. We know that this is merely a move to keep me from doing our press conference.
McAfee admits having differences with the shooting victim, Gregory Fall, but denies having anything to do with his death. McAfee's attorney says Guatemala has to give his client asylum.
So I told them, I think that no country in America Latina can deny a solicitude of asylum.
McAfee claims authorities in Belize are trying to silence him because he has sensitive information about corruption in that country. But Authorities in Belize deny persecuting McAfee and say there is no warrant for his arrest. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
It is certain that I will spend the rest of my life in prison because the United States wants to use me as an example.
Software mogul John McAfee was found dead in his prison cell this week. The creator of McAfee VirusScan was arrested in October 2020 in Barcelona, Spain, after being indicted in the U.S. for tax evasion. Authorities allege McAfee failed to file income taxes for 2014 through 2018, despite earning millions of dollars. McAfee was indicted in March 2021 on separate charges of money laundering and fraud. He was supposed to be extradited back to the United States, but Spanish authorities say McAfee was found dead in his prison cell. A statement from the Catalonia Regional Government Justice Department says everything indicates McAfee may have died by suicide.
Wake up, people. Be very cautious who you give power to.
Recent videos and statements on John McAfee's Twitter account claim prison food was terrible and that sorrow is plainly visible even in the most angry faces. McAfee's final penned tweet, written less than a week before he died, said, "I have nothing, yet I regret nothing." John McAfee was 75 years old.
John McAfee found dead today in a prison cell in Spain. The founder of the antivirus software that bears his name had just been ordered extradited to the United States on tax evasion charges. He faced up to 30 years in prison if convicted. He was 75, and a wild ride of a life it was. McAfee's VirusScan software came out back in 1987, and he ran the company for 7 years until he resigned in '94. McAfee missed out on the $7.7 billion that Intel spent to buy the company, but he did amass an estimated $100 million fortune before the financial crisis crushed it back in 2008. In 2013, he created a profanity-laced video explaining how users could uninstall his own software. The year before, McAfee faced criminal accusations while living in Belize. As the story went, his next-door neighbor poisoned his dogs, and McAfee had him killed. But he never faced criminal charges. He talked to CNBC's Jane Wells about that in 2015, and it was clear he had issues.
My wife is sort of put out because I'm up and down all night long looking out windows and things. I mean, people do think I'm paranoid, and perhaps that's a paranoid act. If you believe the stories and believe that the Belizean government might actually still be after me, that's a stressful situation.
Well, they never got him, but a federal court in Florida ordered him to pay more than $25 million in damages to the dead man's estate. The feds say McAfee failed to file tax returns for 5 years last decade. The Securities and Exchange Commission came for him, too, accusing McAfee of making more than $23 million in undisclosed income from false and misleading cryptocurrency recommendations. The federal court in Manhattan charged him in an alleged pump-and-dump scheme. Along the way, of course, McAfee ran for president. He posted a video on New Year's Eve 2015.
Spy cameras are hidden in cactuses. The government surreptitiously parses our verbal communications, and the concept of privacy is fast approaching extinction. Hatred, anger, jealousy, fear, greed, distrust, and the whole host of afflictions that humans must bear lurk just beneath the surface of civility displayed by government.
The campaign didn't resonate. Last October, police in Spain arrested him on the warrant out of the United States. 1 week ago today, from his prison cell, McAfee tweeted, "The U.S. believes I have hidden crypto. I wish I did, but it has dissolved through the many hands of Team McAfee. Your belief is not required. And my remaining assets are all seized. My friends evaporated through fear of association. I have nothing, yet I regret nothing." Authorities in Spain say they suspect John McAfee killed himself. His death is under investigation.
I'm back in my element. I'm back on my grind. This is irrelevant. All that matters is the climb. I'm such a perfectionist, so everything gotta be right.